The wind did not announce itself politely that night. It arrived like a verdict already passed, screaming through the frozen forest, tearing at the thin green tent as if it meant to erase it from the world. Inside that fragile shelter, pressed together on the hard snow, an elderly couple held onto each other, not just for warmth, but for proof that they still existed. They had been forgotten by their own children, abandoned by the lives they once built with love, and left to face a blizzard that showed no mercy. If you believe stories like this should be told, stories about kindness, second chances, and human resilience, then take a moment right now to like this video, share it, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps these voices alive. They had not always lived like this. Once, their home smelled of warm bread and old books, of medicine cabinets and family photos lined carefully along the walls. The men, whose hands now shook from cold and age, had spent 40 years working honest jobs, waking before sunrise, returning home after dark, believing that every sacrifice was an investment in his children's future. His wife had lived her life quietly, pouring love into small acts, mended clothes, cooked meals, gentle prayers whispered over sleeping children. They were not perfect parents, but they were present, steady, and hopeful. When the children grew up, moved away, and built lives of their own, the couple believed the hardest part was over. They never imagined that old age would come not with rest, but with rejection. The betrayal was not loud. It did not arrive with shouting or slammed doors. It came in missed phone calls, postponed visits, and conversations that slowly shifted from concern to inconvenience. When illness crept in and savings began to thin, the children spoke less about helping and more about boundaries. Eventually, the words were spoken that changed everything. There was no space for them anymore. Not in spare rooms. Not in busy lives, not in hearts hardened by comfort. With what little they could carry, the couple left the city, drifting toward the only place that did not judge them, the forest, silent and indifferent. Winter did not wait for them to be ready. Snow fell heavier each day, swallowing paths and burying footprints, as if the world itself wanted to forget they had passed through. The tent they owned was meant for mild weather, weekend trips, not survival. Its fabric was thin, it seemed strained, and every gust of wind made it shudder violently. They wrapped themselves in a single blanket, breath fogging the air, bodies stiff with cold. Hunger gnawed quietly, but the cold was louder. It crept into their bones, numbing fingers, slowing thoughts, making every movement feel like a final effort. The forest at night was terrifying in its beauty. Snow-laden branches creaked under their own weight, occasionally snapping and crashing into the darkness. The moonlight reflected off endless white, making the world feel vast and empty. Inside the tent, time lost meaning. Minutes stretched into hours, and every hour felt like a test of will. The woman's breathing became shallow, her body weaker with each passing moment. The men held her close, whispering silent promises he could not be sure he would keep, promises that they would survive, that this was not how their story would end. He thought about their children constantly. Not with anger at first, but with confusion. How could love fade so completely? How could hands once held so tightly now be turned away? He replayed memories in his mind, searching for the moment everything went wrong. Maybe it was when he could no longer contribute financially. Maybe it was when sickness made him slow, inconvenient. Or maybe love, when tested by responsibility, simply failed. The realization hurt more than the cold, because it carried the weight of a lifetime's worth of effort dismissed as disposable. As the storm worsened, the tent began to collapse inward under the weight of snow. He pushed against the fabric with frozen hands, knocking snow loose again and again, knowing that if it caved in, they would not survive the night. Every movement drained what little strength he had left. His fingers were numb, his joints screamed in pain, but he kept going. He did not fight the storm for himself. He fought for the woman beside him, the one who had shared every joy and hardship for decades, the one who still believed that kindness existed somewhere beyond the trees. At dawn, the blizzard finally softened, but it left devastation behind. The world was buried, silent, and deadly cold. The couple was barely conscious, their bodies pushed to the edge of endurance. The men knew they could not stay another night. With shaking resolve, he crawled out of the tent, sinking into knee-deep snow, scanning the endless white for any sign of help. There was none. No roads, no houses, no people, just trees and frozen air. He felt the weight of despair settle heavily on his chest, threatening to crush what little hope remained. And yet, something changed inside him. Perhaps it was the simple fact that they were still alive. Perhaps it was the stubborn refusal to let abandonment be the final chapter of their lives. He returned to the tent, gathered their belongings, and slowly helped his wife to her feet. Step by painful step, they began to move, guided not by certainty, but by the belief that standing still meant death. Each movement was a negotiation with pain. Each breath felt like it might be the last. Hours passed like this, until exhaustion finally forced them to stop. Just as despair threatened to claim them completely, they saw it, a faint trail, barely visible beneath the snow, suggesting human passage. They followed it with renewed determination, hearts pounding with fragile hope. Eventually, through the trees, a small structure emerged, abandoned but intact. It was nothing more than an old ranger's shed, weathered and cold, but to them it looked like salvation. Inside, the air was still freezing, but the walls blocked the wind. They collapsed onto the floor, too weak to speak, tears freezing on their cheeks. They had survived the worst of the storm, not because the world had been kind, but because they refused to surrender to cruelty. In the days that followed, help finally came, not from family, but from strangers who found them while surveying storm damage. Food, blankets, warmth, and gentle concern arrived in forms they had forgotten existed. Recovery was slow. Bodies healed faster than hearts. The pain of betrayal did not disappear simply because they survived. But something unexpected happened as well. Their story spread, quietly at first, then widely. People listened. People cared. Strangers reached out with messages of support, offers of help, and reminders that family is not always defined by blood. The couple learned, painfully and beautifully, that kindness often comes from places we least expect. Before this story ends, take a moment to comment below and share what you feel. Your words matter more than you know, and they might reach someone who feels forgotten right now. The elderly couple never fully understood why their children turned away. Perhaps they never would. But as they sat together weeks later, wrapped in warmth instead of fear, they realized something profound. Survival had given them more than life, it had given them clarity. They were not failures. They were not burdens. They were survivors, bound together by love that endured when everything else fell apart. If this story touched your heart, if it made you reflect on kindness, responsibility, or the quiet strength of those we often overlook, please like the video, share it with others, and leave a heartfelt comment. Your engagement helps ensure that stories like this are seen, felt, and remembered. In a world that can be cold and unforgiving, sometimes the smallest act of compassion, watching, sharing, caring, is what keeps someone else alive.